There are some crimes that raise a revulsion within us, a sadness and a rage, a frustration. Now, these cases can be different depending on who you are, depending on what you may relate to. I know that for me, the cases that get to me are the ones involving children, especially when the victim is a child. The case I'm covering today is very unique in many ways, because both victims and their killer are kids. Instances of kids killing other kids happen sporadically throughout the world, but Mary Belle isn't like those. Mary Belle displayed a different sign than the others. Mary Belle was, depending on which criteria you apply, a serial killer. An 11-year-old serial killer. Mary Belle was born in 1957. Her mother was Betty Belle, 17 years old, and no one knows who her father were. Betty Belle wasn't exactly what you would refer to as a good parent. Her own sister once called her demented. Growing up with an unstable and abusive mother surely attributed to Mary Belle's cold and psychopathic nature. But I don't believe it is solely to blame. It's a very old argument, but I still find it very fitting. Millions of children around the world grew up in harsh conditions with abusive parents, but they don't become killers. They don't commit horrific acts as they grow. I believe that something must be there before. Maybe the abuse can trigger it. I do believe it did so in Mary Belle's case, because it's very rare that the acts she would commit would surface so early in life. Mary was detached from her peers at an early age. She didn't have many friends, she was just off. Her volatile mother didn't help the matter, and once Betty Belle had given Mary away to a random person on the street to watch her. And that should tell you all you need to know about the type of person Betty was. At age 5, Mary witnessed one of her friends get hit by a bus, dead, further adding to the escalating progression of the simmering darkness within the child. Her mother would also feed young Mary drugs. At age 1, she nearly overdosed. Usually, these things linger. They don't explode until the person subjected to them has reached adulthood. But Mary was different. Mary was a very violent girl. The signs of her abuse were there long before Martin Brown would be found dead. She had injured her own 3-year-old cousin. He had been found bleeding from the head, and Mary had admitted to pushing him off the ledge. Mary had a little helper with her too. Her name was Norma, and she followed Mary in her violent adventures. It was like a twisted version of Child's Play. Where normal children would play the games children play, Mary would do it violently. She had, for example, begun strangling and choking a couple young girls playing by a nursery in 1968. And of course, Her reliant helper Norma was by her side. Mary didn't kill anyone on that day, but it wasn't long before she claimed the first victim, Martin Brown, only 4 years old. Martin Brown's dead body was discovered in a boarded-up house on May 25, 1968. He hadn't been gone for long, only 15 minutes, but during that time someone had killed him, and that someone was Mary Belle, with the help of her trustee Norma. Martin was still bleeding from the mouth when he was found. Some construction workers were called over to try and revive him, but he was already gone. Lost. The cause of death was not apparent yet. No signs of strangulation and no signs of violence. All they found was an empty bottle of aspirin nearby. Martin was just 4. Maybe he had been curious and eaten the pills in the bottle. They just didn't know, so his death remained open. But that also meant that they weren't actively looking for a killer yet. While the police struggled to find out how the tragedy happened, Mary and Norma began engaging in psychological terror. It was young Martin's grieving aunt that pestered. They would constantly remind her of the tragedy, asking her if she missed Martin. It could have been interpreted as stupid kids asking dumb questions, but there was a motive, a very adult way of thinking in terms of fucking with someone, teasing them without doing it outright. The subtlety of it was chilling. The 2 young girls also mentally tormented young Martin's mother. They would knock on her door and ask her if they could see Martin. The mother told the girls that Martin was dead, and when she did, Mary Belle with a smirk told her that, "No, I wanted to see him in his coffin." Shortly after that, a nurse at a local nursery found a letter dropped. The letter had been written by Martin Brown's killer, and it said, "I murder so that I may come back. Fuck off, we murder, watch out Fanny and faggot. We did murder Martin Brown, fuck off you bastard. You are micey because we murdered Martin Brown. Look out, there are murders about by Fanny and old faggot, you screws." As one can tell, the signs were there, but no one took Mary Belle seriously. They knew she was a rotten egg, but they didn't fathom that she could be responsible for murder. In school, Mary drew a young lifeless body with a bottle of pills next to him. She signed it Tablet, but still no one raised an eyebrow. It was a different time back then. It really was. Mary Belle was 11, but she knew how to fuck with people's minds. Shortly before her second and last murder, Mary Belle visited the parents of a young boy named Bryan, 3 years old. She told them that her trusted friend Norma was violent, that she had seen Norma strangle a young boy. It was probably her idea of setting Norma up. She must have known somehow that she would be caught sooner or later, so as a precaution in her still fully undeveloped brain, she thought to plant the seeds, and maybe, just maybe, they would put it all on Norma. You see, Mary Belle killed Bryan just a couple of days after this visit to his parents. It was a violent crime, a clear escalation. Mary Belle, a child, was becoming what grown men like Ted Bundy become in their 20s or 30s. Such an odd case. Pat Hove was the sister of Bryan Hove. She was looking for him. He should have been home by now. That's when Mary Belle approached her. Mary asked if she was looking for her brother. Pat responded that she was. Mary knew where Bryan was. He was laying in between 2 cement blocks, and she desperately wanted Pat to discover him. She wanted to see the shock in Bryan's sister's face when she saw the dead toddler laying there on the cold ground. The scene was disturbing. A small child, a fucking toddler, dead in the wet grass. He had been strangled and a pair of broken scissors laid beside his corpse. The scissors had been used in an attempt to skin the toddler's genitals. Also, clumps of his hair was missing, and he had puncture wounds on his thighs. It was outright sadistic. On top of that, something was carved into the young boy's belly. It was an M. M as in Mary. It had been carved in with razor blades. Such a bizarre and strange crime scene. I have seen many crime scenes, the Black Dahlia, Jack the Ripper and many more, but there was a certain level of playfulness about the whole thing, if that makes any sense. An adult brutally murdering someone is of course brutal, but it's usually a sexual thing, a need to humiliate and dominate. Every wound has its own twisted purpose. With Bryan Hove, it seemed more like a twisted experiment, a child's version of a brutal and sadistic murder. Mary Belle may have been somewhat smart for her young age, but she was still just a kid, with a kid's brain. She made the mistake of thinking that she could outsmart the police, so as she was being interviewed, she told detectives that she had seen an 8-year-old boy with Bryan the day it happened. She had seen the 8-year-old boy strike Bryan above the head, and she had even seen him play with a pair of broken scissors. See, that's where it fell apart. Not only did the 8-year-old she implicated have a solid alibi, but the thing about the broken scissor was confidential. No one but those involved could have known about the scissors. On the day of Bryan Hove's burial, as people, young Bryan's friends, his family and those touched by the horrific incident mourned the loss of life and potential, Mary Belle was standing outside the Hove family house, laughing continually, rubbing her hands together, basking in the tragedy she had created. Norma would become the key. She told police about Mary. She told them Mary had shown her the dead body of Bryan. She knew he was dead because his lips had been purple. And as they stood there over the lifeless corpse, Mary Belle dragged her fingers across the purple lips, telling Norma that she had enjoyed it. Now, Norma may have been the key, but she was very far from innocent. She would hang on to Mary, participating in her violent endeavors. Now these things are very complicated, because these are children. You can't really treat them like you would an adult. Norma was an impressionable child, but she shouldn't have gotten off scot-free like that. She played her part. She helped Mary Belle, and just because she helped bring Mary down, it doesn't diminish what she did. But the main thing here is of course Mary Belle, the one responsible, the one basking in the terror she inflicted upon mourning families. Mary Belle spent 8 years in a youth facility. In 1977, she escaped with 2 boys, but was quickly arrested again. By now she was a grown woman, and for some reason in 1980, just 3 years after actually escaping, she was released, 23 years old, a new name and freedom. She now has grandchildren. She still keeps her anonymity, but every once in a while her location leaks out and she has to move again. She has to keep her true self a secret. She knows better now. I don't think she's a threat anymore, but releasing her in her 20s sounds pretty dumb to me. I'm sure that she grew out of her edgy phase, but the violence that 11-year-old girl displayed is something that comes from the inside. Something that doesn't just go away. She's an old lady now. I don't know what she feels. I don't know if she feels regret over killing Bryan and Martin in '68, or if she feels regret for getting caught. Either way, she was, in my opinion, released too soon. She destroyed more than just 2 lives. She destroyed their families, their memories, and their future. It remains as one of the most bizarre chapters in true crime history that I have seen. A child's wicked depiction of a serial killer.